Book 101 Radio. Book 101 is all about the books that are read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Forget That Bee, and none other than Mr. Paul Bauer.
Daniel, thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Paul, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, my name is Paul Bauer. I host the Come On Man podcast, which is available on all of your favorite podcast platforms. I'm a men's coach and content creator full-time. And this is my fourth book, Forget That Bee. And I wrote it with two specific guys in mind, because I've seen this countless times over the years, but two of my friends went through this where they went through a nasty breakup or a divorce, and they knew they needed to move on, but they couldn't stop thinking about their ex and how to get back with an ex. And so I wrote this book with men like that in mind, because I've seen it countless times in my work, but there's always guys that are trying to get back with an ex. And so the way the book is written, it explains why that's a terrible idea. But then you're not going to listen to me and you're going to try to get her back. So here, let me show you how to get her back. And so that's what chapter 2 is. It's all about how to get your ex back. And then it's, okay, you got her back and it ended the same. Now it's time to actually move on and do some healing work. And so the rest of the book is all about healing, getting past that breakup and recovering from it. And then working on yourself so that you never have this happen to you again. Because a lot of guys, when they go through a breakup, they just try to, and they find someone new, they just fall back on old patterns. They never actually do the work on themselves. And what a lot of guys don't realize is that you're the common denominator in all your relationships. So you can just replace this last girl, but you're going to end up with the same problems until you do that work on yourself. So that's what this book really does, is to show guys how to do that inner work and start becoming more of an attractive guy so that they don't have to ever deal with this sort of thing again.
Mr. Paul Bauer, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And what inspired you to write Forget That Bee after your own experiences with a failed marriage and breakup?
Yeah. So let me just give the audience my Batman origin story, because I never sought to be an author or a podcast host or a men's coach. In fact, I'm a retired IT director, but going back in time, back to high school, I was always pretty good with women, but I always had that sniper mentality when it came to girls, which a lot of guys do. They get sort of tunnel visioned on one girl, the first girl that's nice to them, they go all in. They stop looking at their other options. They get blinders on for red flags, and they just immediately fall in love. And then this one's their soulmate. And so I was that guy, always looking for my soulmate, always looking for a wife. I was really running for that white picket fence. And when I was 18, I joined the U.S. Navy. And 2 years into that enlistment, I met my now ex-wife. And same kind of thing. I went home on leave. I met her through some mutual friends, and we immediately hit it off, and I immediately got Twitter pated and fell in love. And we ended up in a long distance relationship for about a year before I convinced her to move out to San Diego, where I was stationed. And when she moved out there, we knew each other in person for about 3 months before we ended up eloping, because I was getting ready to go on a couple of deployments, and I wanted to make sure she was taken care of, because that was my value system when I was that age, is that you're the man, you're the provider, you got to take care of her. And so I wanted to make sure she was taken care of. So I married her so that I could get all the military benefits and make sure she was on healthcare and all that kind of stuff. And fast forward, we were actually married for 14 years. And I would say the first half of that marriage was good. That first 7 years was pretty good. We have 2 wonderful kids out of that experience. But the last half of that marriage, Daniel, was miserable, absolutely miserable. There were days where I would work 17-hour days just to avoid going home. There were days where she was just such a insufferable person to be around that I didn't even want to go and sleep in the same room as her. I would go and grab a cot and go sleep in my office or something just to get away from her. But I was always the kind of guy that never would have quit that marriage. I was always raised where when you're a man, you get married, it's good at first, you have a couple of kids, and then you just resolve to be miserable for the rest of your life. And because that's how my dad is. My dad and my mom are still together. They hate each other. My both sets of my grandparents stayed together until they all died. And so I was that guy. I was never going to quit, but my wife, bless her heart, in 2014 decided she had had enough. And so she had the strength to actually file for divorce. And I found myself back on the dating circuit in 2014 after having not been out dating for 15 years. It was a completely different world. There's dating apps now. There's the whole Me Too movement now and stuff. And so I just floundered around on the dating circuit for 11 months until a gal, I jokingly say, took pity on me and was nice to me. And it was the first, just like old patterns in high school, the first girl that's nice to me. I went all in on this one and I overlooked all of her red flags. And the big problem is that I fell back into husband mode like immediately. I just wanted to get back to that semblance of normalcy that I had when I was married. And so I fell back into what I call husband mode, which is where you just think that you don't have to do anything anymore. You don't have to try. You already got her. You don't have to do anything romantic anymore. And so this gal, luckily for me, she mentally checked out from the relationship 2 years into it and began lining up her male orbiters. And by the 4.5-year mark, she was really pushing me away a lot and just acting so bad that I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And I finally said, look, this isn't working for me. We need to break up. And so I broke up with her. And I found out that, in hindsight, she was actually cheating on me at the end. And so I find myself back on the dating circuit. This was like in 2019. And this time I lost all the weight because when I was married, I gained a ton of weight. And so during this relationship with the second relationship, I had lost all of it. And so this time it was easy to get dates. I was able to get dates like it was nothing. But I couldn't keep these women around more than 2 or 3 dates. And so I finally had this epiphany after a bunch of failed dates where I was like, what am I doing wrong here? I'm clearly messing up with women. The 2 biggest relationships in my life failed. I can't keep women around more than 2 or 3 dates. What am I doing wrong? And one of the blessings of that second relationship was that she was really big into audiobooks. And so I had this epiphany of maybe there's some audiobooks I can read to figure out women and women's attraction and the psychology of attraction and intersexual dynamics and evolutionary psychology. And so I just did a deep dive and I just read every book I could. There's some books that I read on repeat. There's some that I've read 25 times. And just in that process of studying, I ended up in a men's group with a bunch of other guys going through the same process and studying the same books. And from that, I started a podcast really just for the group and just to talk to other guys in the group, just to see where they were at and why they got there. And the podcast ended up getting really popular. I started talking to more authors and I started working with some of the top guys in the space. I ended up getting a life coach certified and NLP certified. And then I started writing books. And now I'm here on your show, Daniel.
Wow. And congratulations, Mr. Paul, for all those, well, projects. How does your book define the red pill approach to navigating the emotional aftermath of a breakup?
Yeah, so that's the thing. So this book, it's part 2 in a series called the Red Pill Guide series, which you can find on Amazon. And the way I wrote this series is the first book is for guys that are trying to fix a broken relationship and try to turn things around. But if for whatever reason they can't do that, the second book is about them getting over that breakup. And so what does red pill really mean? Red pill gets a bad rap online because there's a lot of guys that brand themselves as red pill, guys like Andrew Tate, maybe people have heard about him. And what ends up happening is though that content ends up just being about bashing women and making fun of women and hating on women for their nature, but that's not what red pill was ever intended for. If you read some of the earlier work of the original guys that started this sort of praxeology, red pill was never about hating women. It was about not hating women for what they could never be. And so it's really about understanding objective truth about what women find attractive, what motivates them in relationships, and then how men can use that to our advantage to actually have the kind of relationships that we want to have with women. And so it's really a very useful guide. And if you're not familiar with the term praxeology, what it really is just taking what works and leaving what doesn't. And then guys just swapping notes about what works and what doesn't in relationships and dating. And that's all it ever really was. And so my guide is really designed for guys to understand how a woman's attraction works so that they can use that to their advantage.
Can you explain the core message of Forget the Bee for men struggling to move on from the heartbreak?
The core message?
Yes,
The core
please.
message is to forget that bee, man.
Forget that bee.
No, it's I would say the core message for guys is that getting back together with an ex is a terrible idea. I use a quote in the book from a guy in the space named Rollo Tomassi. Rollo Tomassi has 9 iron rules that he calls them. And iron rule number 7 says it's better time and effort spent to meet new women than it is to get back with an ex, because it's like digging through the trash. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. That's not an exact quote. But so the core message in this book is to, hey, man, that relationship ended. You need to actually move on. Let's walk through that process of actually healing and moving on and finding a much better woman going forward, one that's more compatible with you that you can actually be happy with.
What does reclaiming masculine identity play in helping men heal from breakups, as emphasized in the book?
Well, a lot of guys, especially in America, where a lot of guys suffer from what we call nice guy syndrome. There's a gentleman in the space named Dr. Robert Glover, wrote a phenomenal book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And what we find in Western culture is that ever since World War II, we've had a decline in masculinity where men, the fathers, uncles, grandfathers, aren't around the boys as much because they moved away from an agrarian society to more of a industrial society. And so dads stopped working the farms with the boys and showing boys how to be men, and they started going to the factories for 14-hour work days and stuff. And so boys were left at home to be raised by mom. And then during the women's live movement or the feminist movements of the 60s, women started actually going into the workforce themselves. So now boys aren't raised with mom and dad. They're raised in daycare centers or schools, which are also 99% ran by women. And so boys are basically being feminized in our country. They're and bless these women's heart, they're doing the best they can teaching these boys how to be men, but women don't know how to be a man. And so it's really hard for them to teach boys how to be men. And so a lot of boys are just raised trying to be people pleasers, trying to make the women in their life happy all the time. And so we have this paradigm here in the United States of happy wife, happy life. And it's ruining marriages. We have like a 50% divorce rate in this country. And a lot of it is because of this paradigm that we've been teaching boys. So reclaiming that masculinity, introducing the concept of polarity, where when you're in a relationship, there's a difference. It's not an equal partnership. In America, everyone calls each other a partner instead of husband and wife. And it's not an equal partnership. And the thing is that we try to make it an equal partnership. But what guys end up doing, because they're raised to be people pleasers, is they default to their wife, or they defer to their wife, rather. They defer to their wife for decision making. Something as simple as where do you want to eat for dinner becomes a huge debate, because women at their core want to follow a masculine man's lead, and these guys aren't leading. They're leaving it up to her to lead. And when there's, the universe hates a vacuum. So when that void of a leadership is missing, women fill that role, and then they resent their men for it, because in their heart of hearts, they believe he should be doing this job and being more decisive and assertive, and not let me walk all over him and stuff. So a big message in the book is to reclaim that masculine energy, reclaim that masculine role, and actually learn how to set the tone and lead in your interactions with women.
Mr. Paul, as an author as well as podcast host, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Well, the short-term goal is to get on a New York Times bestseller list. That's so I need your audience's help with that one. No, honestly, my short-term goals really are just to get these books out. I have another book. The third book in the series is going to be coming out in December. So that's a short-term goal of finishing that up, getting it ready for publication, and getting that out to the people for Christmas time. Long-term, the goal is just to help as many, not just men, but families, because if we can help men in their relationships, it's going to spill over with the women in their lives. The women are going to be much happier. If they have kids, their kids are actually going to learn how healthy relationship dynamics are supposed to work. They're going to carry that into their relationships. And so eventually, if we get enough guys on board with this, I really think that this message can help make the world a better place in the long run.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Paul. I'm looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people that want to be an author as well as podcast host?
If you want to be an author, it's a grind, man. It's a grind. Most people who write books, especially if you're self-published, they sell 200 total books in their lifetime. So it's really hard to make a living at this unless you write really good books and you're really good at marketing and getting out in front of people and get to talk to podcast hosts like you, Daniel.
Yes, indeed. And thank you for that advice, Mr. Paul. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Oh, absolutely. So 3 books that I talk about a lot on my podcast, I refer to them as my holy trinity of dating books, but they also work in relationship. How to Be a 3% Man by Coach Corey Wayne, Atomic Attraction by Christopher Canwell, and Dating Essentials for Men by Dr. Robert Glover. Those are, when I said I read a bunch of these books repeatedly, those are the 3 books I've read on repeat the most. And How to Be a 3% Man, I've read 25 times. It's that good.
Highly recommended, people. And thank you for that recommended book, Mr. Paul. And what advice does Forget That B offer for avoiding a blue pill mindset of catering to others' needs at one's own expense?
Yeah, a big prominent message in Forget That B is is to be your own mental point of origin. And the way that looks, a lot of people are averse to this idea because they're taught not to be selfish and to put other people's needs before theirs. But a great way to look at it is when you're on an airplane and the stewardess says, in the event of a low pressure situation, you have to put your mask on first before you help other people. Well, I'm teaching men to put themselves first in relationships and dating and look at all their interactions like, what's in it for me? Because I'm going to be honest with you, that's how women operate at an instinctive level. They look at relationships for what's in it for me, and most men, we're sort of raised with this Disney fairy tale mindset when it comes to love and relationships, and we believe in true love and unconditional love, and women might think they do, but at a deep level, they're really into it for what can this guy provide for me and my children, and me and my offspring. And so I'm trying to teach guys to have a little bit more of that kind of mentality. And the thing is that when guys do that and they sort of put themselves and their mission first, their families tend to benefit from it. And so everyone around them benefits. It's just like putting a mask on and then helping someone else, because you can't help someone else if you're passed out. So the same thing happens in relationships.
Mr. Paul, how did your collaboration with Nurse Chick, as noted in the Amazon description, influence the book's perspective?
Well, so Nurse Chick is my girlfriend, and she and I have been together for going on 5 years, and it's an effortless relationship. And I just call her Nurse Chick because I like to keep her anonymous. But she is an actual registered nurse, and she's working on her getting her nurse practitioner um, uh, degree. And so yeah, she actually helped do all the editing for this book, and that's really her influence on the book itself, is really just correcting all my bad grammar and stuff.
Well, before we wrap up our discussion for today, Mr. Paul, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101. Love letters in its third season, and movie 101 review, and music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Paul, what's the one key takeaway you hope readers gain from Forget the Bee to reclaim their life after heartbreak?
I would say a good takeaway would be after a breakup, don't just go rushing out onto the dating circuit and trying to fill that void. A lot of guys can't be alone. A lot of guys after a breakup, they need to fill that void, so they immediately go out and get into relationships and rush into relationships that they should never even be in. So a big key takeaway is when it's time to actually break up, take a good 6 months to a year to learn to be alone again and learn to enjoy your own company. And because only then, and then take that time to heal, because only then will you be really ready to be on the lookout for a much better relationship candidate.
Much better for sure, Mr. Paul Bauer. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your podcast as well as your book?
Yeah. If you want to listen to my podcast or find all my books, you can go to comeonmanpod.com. And that's where you can find, I have some free ebooks for people there. You can book me for coaching consultations, and you can find my podcast. And I have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Paul Bauer, because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering episodes of the podcast itself. So, Mr. Paul, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.